Hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Art of the Scare. This is the series where I take a look at a well-known horror movie, and I look at what is considered the scariest scene of that movie, or at least one of the scariest scenes in that movie, and I attempt to analyze it to an extent. I talk about it and talk about why I think it's so effective. And as I said in the previous video, I'm no expert on psychology, I'm not some kind of movie expert, I'm just a guy who loves horror movies and I love talking about them. I posted the first episode of this series a little while ago, and it was very well received. Seriously, everyone seemed to enjoy this new idea for a series, and thank you all so much for that. It got me really excited to do another episode, so I didn't want to wait too long before I did the next episode of the series. Seriously, I'm very excited about this, but you can't tell because the camera cuts off here. So for this episode, I would like to apologize to everybody because you're all about to feel a slight twinge in your ankle, and I apologize for the psychological pain that is going to be in your feet for the rest of this video, because today we're looking at the Hobbling Scene from Misery.
Annie, whatever you're thinking about doing, please don't do it.
We're gonna cut it off a little short there, but just be ready because, oh, we're gonna get to that. The Stephen King adaptation has, in a way, become its own subgenre. Everybody knows who Stephen King is. He's one of the most notorious horror writers out there today. He's made some great horror stories, he's made some okay horror stories, and as a result from him making so much horror material, we have so much adaptations of his work. Some great stuff, some odd stuff, and some stuff that's, eh.
The Lawnmower Man.
So today we're looking at Misery, which is one of his more notorious adaptations. A lot of people would put it up there with The Shining, Carrie, Pet Sematary. It is definitely, without question, one of his most well-known adaptations, and that is mostly because of the performance of Kathy Bates as Annie.
Have you all got amnesia? They just cheated us! This isn't fair! He didn't get out of the cock-a-doodie car!
Kathy Bates won an Oscar for her performance as Annie Wilkes. That's how good she was in this movie. But I don't think we should ignore James Caan in this movie as the author, Paul Sheldon. James Caan did a great job in this movie as well, and I think, as great as Annie Wilkes' performance is, I think James Caan had a more difficult time to do a compelling performance because in the majority of this movie he's lying in a bed because his legs are broken. And I think giving a good performance while lying in bed for the majority of this movie is very difficult to do.
She died. She just slipped away.
Slipped away?
So, the movie follows Paul Sheldon. He's a writer of this very popular book series known as Misery. He writes about this character named Misery. And he's writing the last novel in the Misery series. He's intending to kill this character off so that he can get away from this character and start writing some other books. So, he's just finished his last book. He's traveling, he's driving down a very snowy stretch of road, and as you would expect, his car starts skidding all over the place and goes flying off the road. He gets in a very bad accident, but then he's rescued by Annie Wilkes. And as luck would have it, Annie Wilkes is Paul Sheldon's #1 fan. She is so obsessed with the character of Misery and these Misery books. And she is trying to mend Paul Sheldon back to health. He broke both his legs, broke his arm, and, he got banged up pretty badly. Her moods change with a snap of a finger and a blink of an eye. She comes across as this very sweet woman, but then when she gets mad, she comes across as,
I don't want her dead! I want her! And you murdered her!
And then she ends up reading Paul Sheldon's latest misery novel, finds out that he killed off her favorite character, and she loses it. The main thing that causes this sense of dread in the movie is, usually in a movie like this, when someone is holding someone else captive, they don't let them know their intentions right away. But as soon as Annie flips to Crazy Annie, she makes it very clear that she's keeping Paul Sheldon in this house, and he is not going to get away, and if anything happens to her, he's going to be left there to die, because no one knows that he's there. The tension in this movie builds and builds and builds until eventually, bang.
It's for the best.
Eddie, please!
I told you we were going to be getting into that scene, and we're going to be seeing that quite a bit, so again, I apologize to your ankles. But, yes, the hobbling scene is... It's the scene that causes the most reaction in any Stephen King adaptation. I remember when I first watched this scene and we got to that scene where we see that ankle go that way after being hit with a sledgehammer, I had a limp for the rest of the day. I literally got up and started limping around the room. That's how effective this scene is. And I get a kick out of watching horror movie reactions because I like seeing people reacting to old horror movies and getting scared. I like seeing people get scared of movies. And every time I see a reaction of this scene, it's always the same. People realize what Annie Wilkes is about to do. She's about to hit Paul's foot with a sledgehammer.
Oh God, no! F off! No! F no! 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 No!
Oh no, she's gonna break his legs. I don't want to see this, dude.
What the fuck? No, I don't want to watch this, dude. No way.
And the reaction is always the same. They go, oh, I don't want to see this. They look away, but then they instantly look back. And the reason for that is, Misery is not an action-packed horror movie. It's a suspenseful horror movie. The tension never lets up. But it's not a graphic horror movie. There's not really any violence in the movie. And so we get to this scene and we haven't seen anything graphic beforehand. So you want to know, are they going to show something here? Because they haven't really shown anything previously in this movie. Throughout this entire movie up until this point, we haven't seen anything. So are we going to see it? So every time I see a reaction of this movie, I see the people look away, saying they don't want to see it, but then looking back because they want to know, and I think that's because they want to know, are they going to show it? And then they show it, which results in everybody going, oh, or oh God, or oh my God, no, and then she goes to the other foot.
Just one more.
And of course, when Annie swings on the other foot, we don't see that foot get hit. But because we don't need to see that foot get hit, because we already saw the one foot, so we know what's happening to that other foot. You know, we've seen all we need to see. But I don't think it's just the fact that Paul's ankle is getting hit with a sledgehammer that makes that scene so effective. For me, what makes the hobbling scene so effective is the build-up, is the setup to everything. Not just the build-up in the scene, and the build-up in this scene is perfect, but build-up throughout the whole movie is what makes this scene so effective. Picture it this way. The way this scene works out is the night before, Annie Wilkes sticks Paul with a needle, which results in him going unconscious. He wakes up in the morning and sees that he's tied to the bed, and then the whole scene plays out. But imagine if this movie went a different way. Instead of having that build-up, we go from Paul being knocked out, then we have him wake up in the morning, and then it just goes right into it.
I'm supposed to lead into the finale of my show right now.
Yeah, it would still be shocking. Yeah, it would still hurt. Yeah, it would still get that reaction, but I don't think it would stick with us as much. It is the build-up in this scene, and the build-up before this scene, that really drives the hobbling scene home. So we're dealing with a movie where someone is being held captive, where they're in a desperate situation, where there seems to be very little hope in them ever getting out of this situation. And when you're dealing with a movie like this, when you're dealing with a movie that feels so hopeless. There's a way you need to do it so that we, the audience, don't lose interest or don't lose hope along with the character. What Misery does so well, and what eventually leads to the Hobbling Scene being so effective, is it gives you little nuggets of hope throughout the film. It gives you, like, little victories here and there. It gives Paul little victories here and there that keep you interested, that make you say, oh, maybe there is a chance that he'll get out of this. First, he gets a wheelchair, so now he's mobile, so now he's not just secluded to the bed, he can move around to some extent. And then there's this perfect setup here. A hairpin falls on the floor, and Paul is able to use that to pick the lock so that whenever Annie is outside of the house, he can get out of that room.
Come on, you've written about this, not do it. Please.
Admittedly, he cannot get far, so the situation is still dire, but it's a little victory there. Oh, he can get out of the room at least. And then there's the moment where he starts realizing that Annie might kill him soon, so he has to do something about it, and he's able to get a hold of a knife. Which, again, it's that little victory. It's like, okay, we have a little victory here. He got a hold of a knife. And there's this one little line that Annie says before the hobbling scene that I think is so much more important than it comes across. It's this one line that adds that extra element of holy shit to the hobbling scene.
The book's almost finished. Your legs are getting better.
That's the important part here. His legs are starting to get better. At the beginning of the movie, we saw his legs, and we saw how bad they looked.
Considering what I had around the house, I don't think there's a doctor who could have done any better.
We get into the hobbling scene with those moments in our mind. We know Paul's legs are getting better. He had a lockpick that he was able to use to pick the lock. We know he has a knife now. And all these moments are little victories throughout the film. But then he wakes up tied down to the bed.
I know you've been out.
What?
And that leads us to the buildup of this scene. That buildup that makes that initial swing of that sledgehammer so much more effective. Then Paul reaches for his knife, and Annie reveals that she found his knife.
I don't know what you're talking about. Ceramic penguin.
Is this what you're looking for?
Then Annie reveals that she found Paul's lockpick.
First, I couldn't figure out how you did it. But last night, I found your key.
It's reveal after reveal after reveal after reveal, and every one of these reveals is a punch in the gut. Because not only do we have it's not just a bunch of reveals, it's one failure after another after another. Paul has had these little successes throughout the film. Getting a lockpick so he can get out of the room, being able to get a hold of the knife, the fact that his legs are getting better, and now these victories are being slowly, or not slowly, they're just being taken away one after another in this scene. But then, the moment that really triggers when something really bad is going to happen is she puts that log in between Paul's feet.
Annie, whatever you're thinking about doing, please don't do it.
And then we get that swing. Oh, God.
Annie, for God's
Shh, darling. Trust me.
sake.
It's for the best.
You see that, like, it's a quick shot. The shot is so fast, but it lasts so much longer in our minds. You see that foot go. Now, what that is there is it's a cast of a foot that has been filled with jelly. And the reason that they put the board in between the feet is so that you could see the leg go to the side like that. You know, it creates this good image. So that way you can really see the leg going to the side after it gets hit with a hammer. I am so sorry, people. I am so sorry for what I'm putting your ankles through. So then Paul's other leg gets hit, and again, we don't need to see that because we saw the first one. We don't really need to see the second one. And now Paul has just been completely defeated. All those little victories he gained throughout this movie have now been taken away, and he's been sending back crashing down into vulnerability. But the cherry on the top is Annie's last line in this scene.
God, I love you.
God, I love you. Annie saying that just makes this scene even more of a disturbing, fucked up thing. Because she means it. In Annie's mind, she means it.
When you first came here, I only loved the writer part of Paul Sheldon. But now I know I love the rest of him too.
That's terrifying. That is fucked up. To abuse someone and to basically torture someone, cripple someone, but do it out of love. Doing something horrible out of love can be scarier than doing something out of anger.
Shh, darling. Trust me.
God's sake.
It's for the best.
Eddie, please!
Almost done.
The Hobbling Scene is a perfect example of how things set up early on in a movie can make a scary scene so much more effective. I always say that half the battle in, whether it's a kill or a scary moment, half the battle of making that effective is the buildup. Sometimes that buildup happens just in the scene, but sometimes the buildup can happen throughout the movie. And when you nail that buildup, you can make a scene so much more effective. And the Hobbling Scene in Misery is the perfect example of proper build-up to your scare. And that's all I have to say about the Hobbling Scene from Misery. Again, I would like to apologize for that twinge you're all feeling in your ankles right now. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Art of the Scare. Again, I'm very grateful that people loved the first episode. I hope people like this episode too. I do intend on doing more of these, as always. I have a few ideas planned out of scenes to talk about, but by all means, leave in the comments down below scary scenes that you would like me to talk about. But on that note, thank you again for joining me in another episode of Art of the Scare, and until next time, this is the Maniac, here to remind you that the grindhouse will never die.